Hi, I'm Skunk from Skunkadelia, and I make these cute robots called Astrobots. This one's a Proteus Class Astrobot, and his name is Bernard. My idea is that I make these robots that can live for hundreds of years, and so I wanted to make a video about how to take care of them. Any object with moving parts tends to wear down over time, and with a couple of little adjustments using everyday tools, you should be able to fix and keep these guys going forever. The nice thing about Proteus Class Astrobots is that they are made from very standard materials. So 1/4 by 20 nuts and bolts and an acorn nut and some split washers are all that are in these things, other than the pieces that I welded together, of course. And so if anything wears out, you should be able to find them in hardware stores from the future. Tools that you will need are, the good news is they're all very standard. You need an adjustable wrench, you need another adjustable wrench, and you will need a Phillips head screwdriver and a 9/16 wrench for the elbows and the knee joints. It's also a good idea to, every once in a while, lubricate the joint with a lightweight sewing machine oil. A little lubricant goes a long way to keep things moving smoothly. So let's start with the elbow joint. So this is just a simple, like, kind of back and forth elbow joint, not much to it. And it's got a bolt going through, 1/4 bolt, a couple lock washers in the middle, a lock nut, and then an acorn nut on the end. And so the first thing you want to do is, if it's not working well, is kind of crack this nut like this. Just separate the two nuts. Those two nuts kind of binding together on the bolt is what keeps them at the correct tension. And loosen the elbow up. Now this doesn't hurt the robot at all. He's got no nerve endings in his elbows. So there's the elbow joint on one end. You've got a couple of split washers that kind of act as a little bit of a way for it to still have tension when you move it back and forth and stay in place. And then you've got your 1/4 nut. Usually you don't have to take it all apart, but that's the order that you put it back together. If you do, the bolt, and then the bolt through the arm, then the split washers, then the hand. Make sure you got it going the right way, otherwise his thumb will be going toward the back. Then your lock nut, and then your acorn nut, just like that. So I'll start with just socking down the inner nut, that tensioning nut, until it's all the way down. Now if you just started moving the elbow back and forth without that lock nut on there, eventually that nut would loosen up and it would come apart. And you don't want that. So the next step is to take the 9/16 wrench, hold that lock nut in place, and then sock down on that acorn nut, nice and firm. Now you may think that you could just go away with 2 adjustable wrenches, but you can't, because the lock nut on the inside is narrow and an adjustable wrench's width is thicker than that of a combination wrench, typically. Anyway. Yep. There he goes. All right, so that is the procedure for the elbow joints and for the knee joints. And those are the 4 hinge joints that you find on a Proteus Class Astrobot. Now you get into the more complicated ones, the ball and socket joints that are in the shoulders and the hips and the ankles. By the way, the ankles are a really important one, probably the most important joint in the whole robot, because it allows the robot to get its center of gravity in the right spot. So if you didn't have that ankle joint, it wouldn't be able to do things like stand on one foot or get both feet kind of centered on the ground. To pose these guys, you kind of come up with a cool pose that you like, and then when you're happy with the pose, you kind of push down on their ankles like that to get them to be level, and then you kind of move their ankles back and forth to find the center of gravity, and voila! They've got some very posable range of movement here that is very expressive. So let's get into a joint here. Let's go into the shoulder here. You've got this outer cage that is surrounding a ball bearing that I've welded a little rod onto. And then you've got a tensioning arm pushing into the ball. And then there's some little washers in there, some little split washers that act as springs. The adjustable wrenches allow you to hug the entire joint like this. I'm using the other adjustable wrench, or you can find the right size. I believe this is a 15 millimeter. This lock nut is what kind of holds the whole joint together here. So once that joint is loose on the arm there, you can unscrew the whole thing. And when you do, you want to keep the joint so the arm is going straight up in the air. The reason being is because there's some small parts in here you don't want to lose. So I've unscrewed that. And then inside here, there's some really tiny little split washers. Hold, stand up straight. And they're little tiny split washers, and what they do is they act as little tensioning springs. Putting it back together, you drop the split washers in. It doesn't matter what orientation they're in, as long as they're kind of settled in there. Then you screw the arm back in, like this, until you feel tension. And the important thing you want to do is make sure that it's lined up. If that's too tight, you can feel it, like you don't want to put too much tension on it. But you want to get the elbow and the arm at a 90-degree angle, or the arm like this. So this relative to this is very important. This arm should not be like at some weird angle or straight like this. You want it to be at a 90-degree angle from each other. Just like a human being's shoulder kind of goes this way and your elbow, I don't know. It works, trust me. So then the next part is to tension that lock nut down on there. Without the lock nut, this would loosen up over time. This could unscrew and then the arm would fall off and then you got a sad robot. So hold the outer cage with your adjustable wrench and with your other adjustable wrench. You want to tension this down nice and tight like this. Don't overdo it, but just a good firm amount. And then you check your tension, and it should feel easy to move, but not so loose that it would fall over again all by itself. So now the more important ones to get right are the ankle joints. Those are the most important ones because their whole weight is balancing on that joint. And if it's too loose, they have a tendency to fall over, or they won't stand upright. So the shoulders are actually under the least amount of tension because they really only have to hold an arm in place. And the hip joints obviously are pretty important too. I mean, I guess they're all important really if you want a happy robot. And the neck joint are sometimes made of smaller parts than the rest of the ball and socket joints on these robots, just to give them a little bit more correct proportions. And that's all there is to it. Thanks for listening, and I hope my robots live forever thanks to this video. If you want to check out more of my stuff, just go to Skunkadelia.com. I've documented every single robot that I've ever built since the beginning, and this is robot number 384, just to give you a sense of the evolution of the species. Thanks for watching.